Story 1, Timeshare. Don't ever do it. No matter what anyone says to you, no matter what incentives they suggest or benefits they talk about, do not ever buy a timeshare. Instead, throw down a few $1,000s onto the ground, set it on fire, and put the fire out. That's a better way to spend your money than on a timeshare. Story 2, Cigarettes. Smoked a pack per day. At around $11 per pack, that was about $4,000 per year into my lungs for nothing. I honestly have no idea how people can afford to smoke these days with the price increases. Quit in 2019 because of the pandemic, which means I've saved around $20,000. Story 3, I was given a birthday present of about $200 or so. I was young at the time, about 17 years old. Anyway, one day I really wanted a raspberry, so I went to the store and bought a raspberry. Unfortunately, raspberries are really expensive. I remember correctly that the ones I bought cost $5 for a small container of them. Then I ate them and wanted more raspberries, so I went back and bought some more. This went on for about 3 days, and by the end of my raspberry binge, I had spent about $100 on raspberries. Some guys blow it all on strip clubs, gambling, and drugs. Me on raspberries. Story 4. It wasn't money actually, and this story is based on vague memories and my family telling me the entire story. I was 9 years old, and my dad passed away, giving me his coin collection as an inheritance. I didn't understand what it was worth, so one day, I took some of the coins, luckily not all of them, and went to buy ice cream from the ice cream truck. It was a busy and warm day, so I just got a cone and handed the girl working there my coins. The girl working was someone we knew, not as in we're friends, more as in she had been doing this for the past 2 summers and my parents always took me to get ice cream when she was working. She took my coins and I enjoyed my cone. Fast forward 2 years, I'm 11 now, and my uncle, whom I haven't seen since Dad's funeral, comes over and after a while asks to see my coin collection. He saw some coins were missing, so asked me where they were. I told him I got ice cream with them. He smiled at me, took out his wallet, and asked to buy the collection. He gave me around $20 and I agreed, so he took the collection with him. When I got married 14 years later, my uncle gave a speech. He started by telling how he loved my innocence. I will do my best to quote the story in my broken English. Do you remember me buying your coin collection, sweetheart? Here they are, you can have them back. I don't want the $20. Don't worry about it. When you were 11, I bought this from you. When I came over visiting and you showed me my brother's coin collection, I saw some coins were missing. You told me you got ice cream with them. I hope it was a good one because it probably was the most expensive ice cream anybody has ever eaten. The coins you paid with were worth around $500 combined, he said as he started laughing really hard. Since I know the owner of the ice cream truck, I asked him if he knew anything about it once you told me the story. He told me he didn't remember, so he asked the girl working there. She remembered, but she also remembered just taking them home and paying for your cone herself. You might be wondering what she did with the coins. Well, I was too, so I asked her. She told me she said they were her lucky coins, and she threw 2 of them into a fountain while making a wish. She still had the last one. After I told her the story, she started apologizing and insisted on giving me the last coin back. I told her no, I just told her to serve the ice cream here today, and he pointed at the girl that was indeed serving ice cream there that day. She started laughing. He gave me back my collection and an even better story. He ended his speech by saying, "Your dad wouldn't have blamed you, sweetheart. He would probably give you an extra coin to buy some more." Story 5. I once splurged at the rental company for a Camaro. Man, what a disappointment. It was so hard to shoulder check. I ended up bringing it back and exchanging it. It was $500 a day for the vehicle, and you had to take their insurance for these specific vehicles. Story 6. A friend inherited $250,000 when his grandmother died. He bought a boat, a Corvette, and a bunch of other stupid things. He doesn't have any of it anymore. Had he bought a house, he would have made a wise investment. Instead, he just bought foolish things. Story 7. Helping my ex-girlfriend. I paid her health insurance, rent, and various other expenses, knowing she was in a difficult situation and needed time to find a job and achieve stability. After a year, I accepted she had no desire to take a job unless it was one she felt was at her level. However, as a foreigner who doesn't speak the language and holds only a bachelor's degree in psychology, her options are extremely limited. With someone else paying for everything, you would expect it not to be too much of a hassle to get a simple job temporarily so she can cover some expenses herself. Story 8. According to a bunch of math, $11,000 on Grand Theft Auto microtransactions over 10 years. At least going through and figuring out the average of what I normally sunk into it a month as far back as my history went. Most likely more. Story 9. Thousands and thousands of dollars to get married. Go to the courthouse if you really love someone so much that you want to be legally bonded to them. The cost of the wedding has zero relation to the potential success of the relationship. Cheers. Story 10. Placed layaway cash down on a pair of stunning boots and never returned for them. I was a busy, broke student and thought I could pay them down over time, but no. Feels now like I threw away money I didn't have at a shoe store for having pretty boots in the window. Feels like a funny mistake. Story 11. The Mad Catz Strike 7 keyboard was the first high-end piece of equipment I wanted for my first ever self-built gaming PC. The problem at the time was that the keyboard cost 2/3 of the PC cost, so I had to save slowly for a while until I got it. For my birthday, my ex contributed the last bit of cash towards it, and I finally got it. I loved the thing, but I was under the impression that the applications on it were customizable or modifiable. They were not, though it wasn't a big deal at first. One of the applications was a mini screen for TeamSpeak 3, which I used only once before Discord gained popularity. There was no way to have Discord on it. A couple of months later, Mad Catz went bankrupt, and a week later, the keyboard started breaking down. I wrote the whole thing off. Months later, the trademark was bought out. While I appreciate it was a new company, they kept pretty much everything the same, and my keyboard was under warranty. I reached out for help and was pretty much told tough luck. Story 12. Not long after I graduated, they replaced the graphic design course with digital design, and then they discontinued that course soon after. Then they changed the name of the school. So I have a diploma in a field that they no longer teach from a college that no longer exists. And this was a school accredited by the state. At least it was just an associate's degree. Story 13. My wedding. So much effort for people I'll never see again. Food I barely got to eat. And games and activities my guests didn't bother with and I had no time to enjoy. At every step of the process, I wanted to make things simpler, but it just got out of hand. At least everyone did a great job and people seemed to genuinely have a good time. Story 14. A goddamn 1997 Jeep Wrangler with a 4-cylinder engine, and doing all these modifications to it to off-road, only to find out it was grossly underpowered. It was a massive turd of a vehicle and could barely hit 50 on the highway. It would have cost thousands to put in a straight 6-engine, new transmission, new axles, and red gear. Forget that thing. Story 15. My wife and I planned and replanned our wedding, which kept getting disrupted by COVID-19. We lost many deposits that we didn't get back. Eventually, we got married inexpensively at her parents' property with about 10 people there. Story 16. I had a friend years ago who inherited a house from his parents when they died, worth about $250,000 mortgage-free. He could have lived there for the rest of his life and just paid bills, which I explained to him numerous times was a privilege. They could be broke for the rest of their lives and still have a roof over their head no matter what. They didn't listen, of course. He sold it, started renting a penthouse apartment in the city, rented Land Rovers on finance, didn't work so everything was paid in cash up front, including rent for full years in advance, and he basically lived off the $250,000. Partied, did tons of drugs, was everyone's best friend. There were so many new faces around him that simply wouldn't have been there if it wasn't that he bought them clothes, drugs, and drinks. He did this for 4 or 5 years, and then one day it was all gone. He ended up in a council house when he couldn't pay rent in advance anymore, in a rundown neighborhood and living on benefits. We lost contact during their "I'm rich so forget you" period when I told them it wouldn't last forever and they should think longer term, and was told to go away and stop being such a bore. I've heard them say to other people who were mutual friends, "It was all worth it." I still think about his parents working hard their whole lives to pay off their mortgage. thinking they are helping their only son get on the property ladder and build some generational wealth in a way they never could, only for him to waste it away in 5 years with nothing to show for it. I know they're dead and it was his money, but it just felt so disrespectful. Some people are their own worst enemies. Story 17. I supported my ex-husband's dream of living in the mountains. My ex and I were teachers. We bought a house in a really not great part of the San Francisco Bay Area in 2013. It was a 1-hour commute to work, but it was the only way we could afford a house on a teacher's salary. It was a foreclosure, and we put a lot of sweat equity into it. 3 years later, he decided he wanted to move to the mountains. I was open to the idea, but not exactly enthusiastic. Ultimately, our commute had become worse each year, and there was no way we could afford to live in the Bay anymore, so we moved to the Sierra foothills. We made over $100,000 when we sold our first home. We bought it for $215,000 and sold it for $345,000. Our new house was $315,000 with a substantial down payment. We knew the new house would be unlikely to appreciate because it was pretty rural, so we knew we would have to stay there long term. Fast forward 3 years, and he asked for a divorce because he was leaving me for his student's mom, who is also married. Took 7 months for us to sell. In the end, we lost money on the house because the market had turned, and wildfires were putting people off moving to the region. So that $100,000 we made on our first house turned into $15,000, which was less than what we had paid for the new flooring, paint, and landscaping we installed in the second home. That first house is now worth over $600,000. Story 18. Co-signing on my kids' student loans. They're finishing up their master's degree. They got married to a person only interested in living in subsidized housing and working a $15 an hour job. 6 years of paying the interest to make it easier to pay off wasted. I've probably paid around $18,000 to $20,000 that could have been saved for my retirement. Story 19. Money on a plane ticket to travel to a guy who then abused me for months, body shamed me, treated me like shit, told me I was so unattractive. I've been happily married for 10 years now to a guy who worships me, so it all turned out fine, but oh, the utter humiliation of the fact that I actually spent my hard-earned money on that jerk. Story 20. Life insurance. Generally, only half of the money you put in actually goes into your savings, and they have a progressive plan so the younger you are, the less you put aside. It is much better to have a savings account with some part in investments, managed by a bank. Insurance companies are the worst idea if you plan to keep your money safe, grow it a little, and make it accessible if you need it. Story 21. Sold most of my music gear to get my ex back. Spent all the proceeds towards dates and gifts for her 5 kids. I dodged a bullet, though. She ended up marrying another guy after 6 months and now has another kid. I do miss that 20-year dream setup. Oh well, I'm happier now and off the liquor. Story 22. 12 euros for a bottle of water. Opened and charged without even asking. Do not go to this restaurant right at the corner at Burhakem Station, where everybody gets off to go see the Eiffel Tower. Simply a scam. Story 23. So far, falling for a phone scam on Facebook Marketplace. If you want to get a good, proper phone, buy it through the usual channels. It will cost more, but it's better than being duped. Story 24. A 1998 Ford Contour, 2 water pumps, a high-pressure power steering hose, a clutch, and a transmission. Then the engine started knocking hard, all in the span of about 3 years. Got rid of the car in 2005, and I think I didn't pay off the repairs until 2011. I've been driving a 2005 Sentra for the last 5 years, and I bought it for $1,600. I've put some work into it as well, but nowhere near what that Contour cost to keep driving. Story 25. $500 sneakers. Not like the money needed to go anywhere, and they are still my special occasion sneakers, but I can admit they are a waste of money in spite of absolutely loving them. Story 26. I hate to say it, but my wedding. It was a beautiful day, and I had the best time, but looking back, it's also temporary and over in 12 hours. You are mostly left with photos, a video we only watch once a year, and probably 200 half-burned candles my aesthetic self demanded. Story 27. I was the owner and only employee of a technology consulting corporation. I got a contract that required errors and omissions insurance. I got a policy that covered all of the employees except the owner. I paid $1,000 for an insurance policy that covered 0 people. Story 28. Renovating a house to sell it. I spent a considerable chunk of my retirement savings on the project, and the selling price didn't budge a dime. Never renovate a house for someone else. Only renovate it for yourself. Never buy an old house unless you're crazy rich and love doing major projects. Story 29. Not me, but the amount of money young men are spending on pornography and platforms like OnlyFans is truly appalling. I'd venture to say it's just as bad or worse than a gambling addiction, financially.